I call this meeting of Sylvania City Council for January 3rd, 2022 to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Fry,
Here.
Mr. Hanson,
Here.
Mr. Hanem,
Here.
Mr. McCann, Mr. Richardson,
Here.
Ms. Stowe,
Here.
Mrs. Westfall,
Mrs. Westfall is excused. 6 members of City Council are present, therefore a quorum does exist. We will start with our Pledge of Allegiance again at this regular meeting, this meeting led by Ms. Lindsay Stowe.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have no additions to the agenda. Mr. Fry,
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Sanford, I believe you do. We'll make that agenda item 13, a TIF update from Mr. Sanford. Anything else, Mr. Sanford? And council, my apologies. I jumped right to Mr. Sanford because he had told me he had something.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to schedule the zoning and annexation, reschedule the zoning and annexation committee meeting on, forget the ordinance number that we canceled for the last meeting.
All right, let's make that agenda item 11A, reschedule zoning and annexation committee meeting. Any additional items from members of City Council? Hearing none. Mr. Schroyer, Chief Snore, Mr. Aller, Mrs. Brining.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
With that, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and the agenda is approved as amended for this evening's meeting. Agenda item 4 is approval of the council meeting minutes from December 20th. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move adoption of the meeting minutes for City Council dated December 20th, 2021 as submitted. Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the meeting minutes from December 20th, 2021 as submitted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and those meeting minutes are approved as submitted. Moving on to agenda item 5. Mr. Aller has a couple of items here on the agenda. The first is concerning the South Main Street Sanitary Sewer Improvement Phase 1. Mr. Aller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The South Main Street sanitary sewer improvement is a project that we're looking at in kind of in conjunction with the Main Street reconstruction project that we have through Surface Transportation Block Grant funds. And that project is scheduled in 2024. With that project, the sanitary sewer that runs down Main Street is a very old sewer. With that project, our concern is that the laterals that are on that sewer, the sewer itself, main sewer, is about 20 feet. We don't anticipate that the construction project will have any. However, the laterals that come off of that, what we call 90, 12 o'clock laterals, they come straight up off the top of the pipe. They get to a very shallow depth, 8 foot and shallower, over to the houses. Those very well could, not uncommon, break those and cause other leaks and that kind of thing, construction. So what we would like to do in front of the 2024 project is take a look at the condition of the main sewer, take a look at the condition of those laterals, and see what we can or can't do if those need to be replaced or if they don't need. To be honest, that would surprise me if they don't need to be replaced, but we want to take a look at everything now so that we can make a determination and have a construction project for next year, if not 23, so that we're done ahead of the street project. So the initial look is, will be done by Atkins Sanitary. They will actually do the camera work, and they've provided a quote in the amount of $10,000 perform that work. They'll provide that information, that will provide the plans and that kind of additional information to Jones and Henry engineers, who will then make a determination based on those videos and based on several different options that we're considering. We're taking a look at almost every possibility. Just open cutting them and put them back where they are, lining them, much like we did the trunk sanitary sewer. You can do that on laterals as well. We may do a parallel collection system for those houses and businesses along that section. We're even looking at the possibility of a low-pressure pumping system that would handle those homes on the street. So that system is basically a 2-inch diameter force main, if you will, and just each house or each pair of houses will have a pumping station that will then discharge it to sewer. Don't have any of those in the city right now, but it is a system that Ottawa County has. One of the first projects I did has about 500 in that area. So it is a system, it is an option, and because of the soils and things of that nature in that area, may be a better low-cost option. We'll be taking a look at all of those options, probably others, once we get the results of this. But we do ask for permission to move forward with the two contracts, the two ordinances that you have for Atkins Sanitary in the amount of $10,000 and Jones and Henry Engineers in the amount of $29,300. And these projects were included in our 2020.
Mr. Aller, question on the way this is proposed is if we're doing the video now and the engineering firm gets it and something different comes to light, would the proposed engineering cost change, or could it?
This cost is this engineering cost is the preliminary engineering cost. So it's
Okay.
it'll just be, this is just for the analysis of the videos, analysis of the plans and things of that nature.
That's what I mean. Would that expand at all?
It possibly could. I wouldn't anticipate it. We think we've got things covered pretty well here. Once we got the final design, then we'll be coming back to you again for additional funds for final.
Okay.
Mr. Aller, just for the record, because I'm pretty sure you mentioned this some time ago when we were looking at first at this. How old is that sewer collection main going down Main Street? Do you have a sense of that?
The one going down Main Street,
The one that you're looking at?
the one that we're looking at here. I believe that is was with the original, so that's probably about 60 to 70.
What's the natural life expectancy of one of those
Clay
facilities?
pipe, and nice runny soil like is in there. We're coming up to,
What I thought you were going to say, that, but I wanted to ask that just to make sure.
we've had a couple of those laterals. It was a pretty common design at the time that those were built, but those 12 o'clock laterals, you can imagine over 60 years, soil weight, all of the work that's been done up above it and that kind of stuff, it starts to bear down on those laterals, and it actually, we've been in there. We haven't had to do it in probably 8 years. We did it right after I got here, and I don't think we've had to do it since then. But we've had to go in there and as you can imagine, 20 feet. Sand.
Never a picnic to dig 20 feet.
Mr. Eller, St. Joseph Church and School are on South Main Street as well, so I assume they're affected, though their laterals are probably newer, yes?
Yeah, they were, especially for the school. The church is probably an older lateral. So the church and the school on the side, probably pretty old lateral, I would have. But the one for the school on
New
the,
school to the east.
on the east side, yeah, that's probably a
There was an old school church facility where the newer elementary on the west side is now. They may have just gone into the existing service line.
could have. Pretty common.
All right, there are two ordinances for approval to get the ball rolling on this project. First is to accept the proposal of Jones and Henry Engineers to provide preliminary engineering services. Mr. McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce by title only ordinance number 1-2022, accepting the proposal of Jones and Henry Engineers Limited to provide preliminary engineering services for the South Main Street Sanitary Sewer Improvements Phase 1 project, appropriating funds therefore in the amount of $29,300. I move passage of ordinance number 1-2022 as an emergency measure.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance number 1, 2022 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and ordinance 1, 2022 is enacted as an emergency measure. We also have the proposal to, or the ordinance to accept the proposal of Atkins Sanitation for the cammering of these sewer lines. That's ordinance 2, 2022. Mr. McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce by title only ordinance number 2-2022, accepting the proposal of Atkins Sanitation to provide televised inspection services for the South Main Street Sanitary Sewer Improvements Phase 1 project, appropriating funds therefore in the amount of $10,000. I move for passage of ordinance number 2-2022 as an emergency measure.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance 2, 2022 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and ordinance 2, 2022 is enacted as an emergency measure. Second project for discussion tonight is agenda item number 6, which is for the improvement of the of Monroe Street, Silica, and the Silica Road Bridge replacement. Mr. Aller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This project is to the point. We have completed stage 2 drawings for both projects, and the next step in them is obtaining any necessary real estate that might be needed for the project. We obtained proposals from GoDOT pre-qualified consultants, and that we're recommending to you this evening are in the ordinances that we asked to be passed. West Erie Realty Solutions is a firm that we've worked with several times, done good work for us in the past. Their proposal to provide project management, title reports, appraisals, negotiations, closings, and document recording is $95,250. Because it's an ODOT project, those appraisals need to be reviewed and approved, and it has to be by a separate party than the firm actually appraisal. So we've also obtained a quote from American Property Analysts to do the appraisal review services, and that quote is in the amount of $12,900. We've also done work with this company, and they actually have a couple hired ODOT real estate. Know the process very well. So we recommend approval of both of these contracts, one with Western Realty Solutions in the amount of $95,250, and the other with American Property Analysts in the amount of $12,900. Expenses were included in our 2022.
Your report indicates there are 15 parcels necessary for these two adjacent projects? That seems like an awful lot.
Seems like a lot, yeah. I think the parcels they're under single ownership, but there's just still a lot of
And
parcels.
it includes the south side of Monroe Street all the way east of the railroad tracks.
Yeah, it goes all the way to Speed.
So that explains some of it right there. Okay. Again, we have any questions for Mr. Aller before we proceed with the ordinances?
Mayor, I have one.
Ms. Dow?
Ballard, do we have any estimate prepared or any idea of what it might cost properties?
We have an estimate that was included in the project budget. Don't recall offhand.
I can,
Yeah.
I'll go back and, I just wanted to check.
Yeah, we have an amount based on commercial property. I want to say it's like, I hate doing back and I look it up and I realize that I was thinking of, yeah, we do have an amount to anticipate. We will be requesting donation of right-of-way, because several of the entities are public entities, so we will be requesting right-of-way. They're obviously under negotiation to do so. We'll actually be giving ourselves but our property will actually be appraised, and I'm pretty sure we'll donate. That's your decision.
And my recollection is that when we get those appraisals, you always tell us how those match up with our estimate.
All right. There's no further questions. We do have ordinances 3 and 4. Proceed with these. First is proposed ordinance 3, 2022, to accept the proposal of WE Realty Solution. Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to introduce by title only ordinance number 3, 2022, accepting the proposal of WE Realty Solutions Limited to provide right-of-way acquisition services relative to the Monroe and Silica intersection upgrade project and the Silica Drive bridge replacement project, appropriating funds therefore in the amount of $95,250. And I would move for passage as an emergency measure.
It is moved and seconded for passage of ordinance number 3, 2022 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 3, 2022 is enacted as an emergency measure. Now on to ordinance number 4, 2022, accepting the proposal of American Property Analysts. Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 4, 2022, by title only, accepting the proposal of American Property Analyst, Inc. to provide right-of-way acquisition service relative to the Monroe and Silica intersection upgrade project and the Silica Drive bridge replacement project, appropriating funds therefore in the amount of $12,900. I move passage as an emergency measure.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance 4, 2022 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 4, 2022 is enacted as an emergency measure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aller. Moving next to agenda item 7. This is an annual resolution we make that is allowed by state of Ohio law to designate the clerk of council as responsible for receiving a training for each of us in the Ohio public records law. So I encourage all of you to do it at least once, and Mr. Hanson, I encourage you to do it specifically this year. It's a requirement at the beginning of each term of office for elected officials. In the past, it's been held nearby at the TMCOG offices, though this year that is not scheduled to take place because the Ohio Secretary of State is pulling it back and is making other arrangements through the state of Ohio, I believe. I don't know if that's finalized yet or not, but they are not having it, Sharon. It may be online training. It may actually work easier for you. we will share that information with you once it's established. But in the meantime, I do recommend this resolution be passed, designating our clerk of council, Karen Bucher, as our designee to attend these training programs. If there are no questions, Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce resolution number 1-2022 and read by title only. A resolution designating the clerk of council as the mayor and city council's designee to attend training programs and seminars about the public records law as required by Ohio Revised Code, section 109.43. I move passage of resolution number 1-2022 as an emergency measure.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded for the passage of resolution number 1, 2022 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries, and resolution 1, 2022 is enacted as an emergency measure. Going to page 2 of our agenda. Both agenda items 8 and 9 are to reappoint members of the Board of Zoning Appeals as recommended by City Council. The first of these is to reappoint Thomas Reynolds to the Board of Zoning Appeals for the term commencing January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce resolution number 2-2022 and read by title only. Reappointing Thomas Reynolds to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term expiring December 31, 2024. I move passage of resolution number 2-2022 as an emergency measure.
It's been moved and seconded for passage of resolution number 2, 2022 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and resolution 3, 2022 is enacted as an emergency measure. Agenda item 9 is to reappoint Gary Summer. Mr. Fry informs me there is a potential conflict of interest in that he has used Mr. Summer as an attorney. So I'm asking Mr. Hanem if he's willing to introduce this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
First, we need a motion to allow Mr. Fry to push back from the table.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to allow Mr. Fry to push back from the table due to a potential conflict of interest. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and let the record show that Mr. Fry is not participating in this discussion or vote. Now, passage of resolution 3, 2022. Mr. Hanem, if you'd be so kind.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I do serve with Gary on the Sylvania Community Services Board, but I don't view that as a conflict of interest, and so I'm comfortable moving forward.
All right.
So I would move adoption of resolution number 3-2022. Now read by title only, reappointing Gary Summer to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term expiring December 31, 2024, and adoption of resolution number 3-2022 as an emergency measure.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for passage of resolution number 3, 2022 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and resolution 3, 2022 is enacted as an emergency measure. Let the record show that Mr. Fry is rejoining us at the table. As we move to agenda item 10. This is a proposed 3-year collective bargaining agreement with our AFSCME union members. I'd like Mr. Schroyer to discuss this with us. What passage tonight allows us to do is the HR department of the city to make payments based on this new contract after it's passed by the union without having to go back and make retroactive payments. That's why we're requesting it tonight. And it is provisional on their union passing it as well. So I think that makes some sense. Just tentatively, we do have the police unions that we need to negotiate with. We simply have been unable to meet with their union yet. There are 3 meeting dates set within the next couple of weeks, and we will begin negotiations with them, but they changed their union representation, which caused a delay. We will keep you posted on the progress of those as well. With that, are there questions for Mr. Schroyer? Hearing none, the new chairman of Employee and Community Relations is not with us tonight. Mr. Richardson, would you be so kind as to read this one?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 5, 2022, by title only, authorizing the mayor and director of finance to enter into a 3-year collective bargaining agreement commencing January 1, 2022, on behalf of the City of Sylvania Municipal Employees Association, affiliated with District 8 American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFL-CIO, and I would move passage as an emergency measure.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance number 5, 2022 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and ordinance 5, 2022 is enacted as an emergency measure. Thank you. Agenda item 11, we have added, committee reports, we have added agenda item 11A to reschedule that zoning and annexation committee meeting that had to be canceled in December. Mr. Hanem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate council accommodating my change in schedule. I had to be out of town at the time of the last meeting. And so I would like to reschedule the Zoning and Annexation Committee meeting on what was Ordinance 77-2021. I assume if we move forward with this, we will have a new ordinance number. But it's a proposal from the Environmental Design Group to review our zoning code. And I would propose that we have that meeting in advance of our next council meeting on January 17th.
Oh, it'll be the 18th, Tuesday,
Oh, I'm sorry.
due to Martin Luther King
Martin
Day
Luther King
celebration.
Day. It's wrong in my calendar, so I'll need to fix that, but, okay. January 18th. After we just adopt Juneteenth, I should have gotten that right. Okay, for January 18th, 2022, and I think we scheduled half an hour for that before, and I think that should be sufficient, so I think we could do that at 7 o'clock. Anybody think differently?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do that at 7. And Leslie, I'd ask you to make sure that Hanson gets a copy of that proposal.
Oh, sure. Yep, I will.
I'd give him mine, but then I wouldn't.
That's okay. I'll be happy to
So,
talk to him about it.
all right, so I will move to schedule a zoning and annexation committee meeting on January 18th, 2022 at 7 p.m. in chamber.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to schedule a meeting of the Zoning and Annexation Committee for 7 p.m. on January 18th here in council chambers to discuss that zoning update ordinance. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and we'll have the clerk post that date. Are there any other committee reports, meetings to be scheduled, or referrals at this time? Hearing none, let's move on to added agenda item 13, which is an TIF update requested by Mr. Sanford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I requested to you all an update of where things stand on the TIF. We had talked about it in the fall. I'll get you up to speed on all the material that we had passed out earlier. Remember in our first discussion, we were concerned about the timing, that there was we could have been facing a crunch because by the end of the year, we got that clarified. We were not under that crunch to get it done by the end of 2021 on the increase in the valuations of the properties. So we've met a few times with our consultant from Reveille, Glenn Grisdale. He is recommending a rolling 75% 10-year TIF. And the first step to move on this then would be to, excuse me, schedule a public meeting with all the property owners in the area that we have TIF, and would be an explanation of how the TIF would work. And again, this is a redirection of the property tax. It's not an increase in the property. That's the biggest point we have to get across. Then right from that, how will those tax dollars be used? And again, it has to be a project in that area. Now, we had talked earlier about the possibility of it being used for the downtown streetscape. We had, and I think the mayor reported earlier that mayor presented recently in December to the state capital budget request of $1 million go toward our streetscape. So Glenn Grisdale actually helped us with the presentation that we put together for that. The tie-in that those TIF dollars could be used as part of payment of the cost to do the streetscape in our downtown. But again, we're not limited to that project, but that would be one, especially if the district was being a larger area than just downtown. We had talked about extending it all the way out to the expressway. So that's what I wanted to report tonight. And it would seem to, well, and two other points, it would make sense to have this meeting before a council meeting. It's not a public meeting per se, but it's a meeting with the public just to inform them of the TIF, and we could have it here, council chambers, and then it would be an opportunity. I really think it's important, and this would be our first TIF, that all of you be present if possible for the TIF. We can see what kind of questions you might have, or what the people may have. And then where I'm also going to be asking that we extend the contract that we have with Reveille. Our original contract with them was for $6,500 to finish this, and where we're at now, it took a little bit of a twist from our first meeting with him. He figures it's going to cost about $1,200 to attend, and a member from his staff to be present at this meeting that we have to help with the legislation preparation. So I would recommend that we would expand and add $1,500 to this contract with Reveille to get this.
We'll need to prepare legislation, I assume, to get that second part done. What's your proposed meeting date?
I wanted to throw that out here. Now, I did check with Glenn, and he is available on February 7th. That's our first meeting in February. And I think would take care of notifying all the property owners. If this is agreeable to council, we could have this meeting at 6:30 before our council meeting.
There is a public hearing already scheduled that night for the medical marijuana special use permit. That might not be an appropriate mixing of crowds, to tell you the truth.
That'll generate some interest.
The next council meeting date would be the 22nd of February.
If that's, I can double check with Glenn. This seemed to be the better date for him. But if that doesn't work, I mean, we could move it to the first meeting in March too. Second meeting. February doesn't work for him. I will check with
If we needed to stick with that original date, you'd have to back up to 6 o'clock to allow an hour, and that seems a bit much.
we
For
will
one
get,
night.
this will be pretty good attendance.
There's
I
a lot of property
anticipate.
owners involved.
Yes, and I think, I mean, there's a lot of things we can answer before the meeting, but I think we'll have good attendance, and I want people to come talk directly to somebody like Glenn that can really answer their question.
All right, so at this point, I would propose that we prepare legislation to come back and extend Reveille's contract by that $1,200 and come back with our recommendation to schedule that public informational meeting. It's not a public hearing, it's just a public information meeting as required by state law standing.
That correct?
All right. Questions or
Mayor?
comments? Dow.
If we are going to do any sort of vote or of meetings, I'd like to way as a property owner within this special district, I want to avoid any conflicts.
That makes sense to me. I agree. There are no actions to be taken tonight. Other questions or comments around the table?
Mr. Mayor, you don't need a specific motion, or do you want a motion to prepare legislation?
Yeah, let's have a motion to prepare that
So,
legislation.
Mrs. Brining, Ms. Stow's concern, she vote on that without a conflict?
I would have her push back even from that.
Okay.
The first motion is to allow her to
Yeah.
push back.
Yeah.
Second.
Moved and seconded to allow Ms. Stow to push back from the table due to a conflict of interest. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And let the record show she is not participating in the discussion or the vote. The vote is to authorize legislation be prepared to extend the contract of Reveille to help more with the TIF meeting and legislation.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion to extend the contract for Reveille by 1,200, you said?
I actually said 1,500 to give us a
1,500.
little cushion. 1,200's about what he expects it to be.
So to expand the contract for Reveille by up to $1,500 for various services regarding the TIF efforts for the downtown footprint. Second.
Been moved and seconded to authorize that legislation be prepared. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll bring that legislation back to you at our next meeting on January 18th. And we'll also come back with the meeting date.
I will get that out get you to confirm the date before next meeting. We won't wait till the next meeting. I
All
can
right.
find that out pretty quick.
Mayor, I do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Just the mechanics of this, recognizing there's differences between property owners would be notified of this, and then people who are tenants of the property owners, correct? Is
Correct.
it your thought process, Mr. Sanford, that we reach out to both, or just the owner? I know legally, we want to definitely talk to the owners, but indirectly, the tenants are paying the bill.
I'm opening it up. It's not exclusive, just the property owners. I'm going to invite the tenants, get some more publicity out in general, just to invite the general public.
Yeah, that might be a subject for a DSA conversation as well, just as a suggestion. I'm sure you already thought about that. The other question I had was what communication we've had about this possible direction with the 10-year rolling TIF with the schools, because they're the most impacted organization by any decision that council would make here.
We will keep them up to speed on this. Leslie and I have had meetings with them about this, but this is the one that we do not have to have a deal worked out with them.
I
for
understand.
this. So, but we will, that's a good point, we'll make sure that they're aware of where we're at and what we're proposing. Now that, I want to get past this meeting before I reach back out to them.
Right, I understand there's no requirement, but that obviously we still want to be good
Yep.
partners with our, with our schools.
Absolutely.
Further discussion?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanford. I'll let the record show that Ms. Dow is rejoining us at the table. However, there are no additional items on the agenda at this time. There's no further business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and this council stands adjourned until its next regularly scheduled meeting on Tuesday, January 18th at 7:30 PM. Thank you for attending.